the one, the only, Ben Sion.
Good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Iyun Sion. Today we did Succah Succah, Perek Daled, Mishnayos Vav and Zayin. Mishnayos Vav and Zayin talk about different things. Mishnah Zayin we'll talk about now. Mishnah Zayin says that when the process or the Seder Hayom in the morning on Shana Rabbah was over, right? We have a long davening on Shana Rabbah. In the Beis Hamikdash, they also had they circled the Mizbeach 7 times, according to the opinion we hold, like with Rava in the center 7 times, opposed to the rest of the Yom Tov 1 time. So the Mishnah Zayin says that after it was over, the Tinokos, the young children under the age of Bar Mitzvah, would throw it down the Lulav and Esrogim, throw them in the garbage ostensibly, and then they would eat their Esrogim. Now, the Gedolim, the Ravadia Bar Tanura points out, the Gedolim over Bar Mitzvah would not eat their Esrogim. Why is this Muksa? It's not the conventional Muksa on Shabbos, where you can't be metal to move it. It's Muksa l'mitzvaso, right? It's supposed to be used for the mitzvah of Daled Minim, and not eating it. If you eat it, you ruin your Esrog. So you can't eat during the 7 days, and the 7 days doesn't end till Shkia. But the Ketanim, even though they're chayav in the mitzvah of Daled Minim Chinuch, you see, Shom Din L'Leveim, they were doing the mitzvah, they're Rabbanan of Daled Minim, right? If they're not 13 years old and have Shei Saros, it's not the right, so nonetheless it's their Rabbanan. But they were not Muzar in the Muksa, which also is their Rabbanan. The question is, why not? Why were they chayav in the mitzvah of taking love and esrog when they're not chayav in Muksa? And the Gedolim wouldn't eat their esrog because of that reason. The answer is, it depends. The famous machlokes, what is the origin, what's the reason behind the mitzvah of chinuch for children under the age of bar mitzvah? There's 2 main explanations. I've heard this many times. One explanation is that there's an obligation on the child. Right, the obligation is on the child once he reaches an age where he understands the mitzvahs. He understands how to, watch his tefillin, watch his tefillin that he shouldn't pass gas. He understands what it means to sit in a sukkah. He knows l'naneah tal lulav. He knows how to shake the lulav. He has respect and reverence for the mitzvahs. It depends. We'll talk about Succah Succah at what age. It depends on the child. The child, how knowledgeable, how much of an understanding he has of what's going on. He reaches an age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, different ages for different kids. He's chayav the mitzvah of the Rabbanan. Why? In order to k'ilachan mitzvah, he should get accustomed to doing the mitzvahs. Therefore, when he learns how to do the mitzvahs, therefore when he turns 13, it's not something new. He's able to do the mitzvahs with all the halachas. The other explanation is that there's no mitzvah on the katan himself. There's a mitzvah on the father. The father has a mitzvah. Rashi in Maseches Brachos seems to say that the father has a mitzvah to make sure that his child does the mitzvah. Why does he have obligation? It's not for the child himself. I would explain it's more like the correct tzura of a family, the correct representation of a family. A family, when you look at them and you have a boy who is going to be chayav in mitzvah, or even a girl who's going to be chayav in bat mitzvah, and they're viewed as a family unit. They're together. The father and son are usually together, so therefore it's incongruent that the father should be doing the mitzvahs and the katan, who has some sort of understanding, should not be doing the mitzvahs. It's a matter of incongruence. The tzura, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look the right way. And that's why the father's obligation to do. But there's no obligation on the katan. We assume when he turns 13, he'll learn the halachos. When I turn 13 years old, basically, that's when you start wearing tefillin. Basically, we don't say a person's ready to wear tefillin until a month before his bar mitzvah. You wear tefillin, you learn the halachos then. You don't have to worry about learning the halachos for so many years. So the nafkamina is over here, right, by Ketanim, right? There's a concept in Chazal, in goes and gzera l'gzera. You don't make 2 gzeros, right? So, as I mentioned many times, that only applies to 2 gzeros, right? The gzera was, you shouldn't come, there's nothing you're doing wrong ostensibly now. It's a gzera, don't do this. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. You might come to a doraisa. So don't say 2 steps away. Don't do this unless you come to do this, doraisa. Because, right, in general, in the world, right, you worry about something that you can see. Right, haroas ha-nola, that nola that was already in the world, you can see it, but then which wasn't davar shelo ba'olam, right? We don't worry about davar shelo ba'olam; it's not in the world yet. Same thing, ain't goes from zera l'gzera, and here depends on the reason. If you say the reason that the katan is chayiv in mitzvos is because he has an obligation himself in order to learn the mitzvos, right? In order to learn the mitzvos, so there's no inherent real obligation on the katan. There's no real inherent obligation on the katan. He's just getting accustomed to the mitzvah. It's so that when he comes, right, it's sort of like a gzera, right? It's takana. Takana is, right? it's a gzera for the averos and a takana for the mitzvah. It's just like you can't do, presumably, right? So, however, if you learn, and therefore, theoretically, averos derabanan, that's mitzvahs daraisa. But averos derabanan, right? The whole point of derabanan was to strengthen daraisa, mechazik daraisa. So therefore, it's a gzera legzera. If we enforce katan shigel lechinach, don't do muksa, don't do eating the esrog during the 7 days of Sukkot. However, if you assume that the real reason, there's actually a reason that a katan shigel lechinach is chayav, the mitzvah is that it's incongruence. The father and son should be doing the mitzvah. It's incongruent. The father should do the mitzvah, and the son, who usually accompanies him to shul, is not doing the mitzvah. So there's an actual takana that the child should be doing the mitzvah. It's not like people say that it's obligation on the father to teach his son. I don't really understand that. I'm saying it a little differently. But it's incongruent. It's surah. It's incongruent. If it's incongruent, there's a real reason why the katan is doing the mitzvah. So therefore, and that would be the real reason, understand that why katan shigel lechinach. So therefore, even by derabanan, it's not gzeira legzeira, because the inherent derabanan has a reason for it. It has a reason. It's not that you shouldn't come do something else. There's a reason for it. So therefore, you can make a gzeira for that type of takana, and even though an issur derabanan would be aser for a child. So therefore, it must be the fact that ketanim are not muzar, that really the idea of katan shigel lechinach is that he should learn to do the mitzvah. So therefore, ein goes in gzeira legzeira, and therefore he's allowed to eat the esrog. It's not because of the incongruence. The real reason katan shigel lechinach is that he should be familiar with the mitzvah. So when he becomes older, he should know how to do the mitzvahs. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in the next one.